slushy lemonade recipe only needs a few simple ingredients. We'll use fresh lemons for the lemon juice, sugar, water, and ice. The equipment that we'll need to make our slushy lemonade includes the blender, which we're going to break down into pieces and talk about how to care for properly as well as how to use properly. We'll need a cutting board and a paring knife to slice lemons in half before we use the juicer, which I've placed over a liquid measuring cup to measure the juice as we use it. We're also going to need a dry measuring cup and a straight edge spatula for the sugar, and we'll need a zester or a microplane grater for zesting the lemon. Before we get into the actual recipe, we need to talk about care and use of the blender itself. So the blender has the base, the jar, and the lid, basically. But the jar and the lid break down into separate pieces, and they need to be taken apart to be washed thoroughly, and then dried completely before being put back together. So let's talk about the blender jar first. We're going to turn this upside down, and we're going to take off what's referred to as the bottom ring. That's this piece. And then here you see we have the blade and the gasket. And this gasket is very important because it's what keeps it watertight, and that it's placed properly is key. So we'll put that there, and then we have the lid and the lid insert. What the lid insert allows us to do is, while the blender is running, we can add things to the jar without making a mess. So we have the lid insert, the jar, blender jar itself, the gasket, the blade, the bottom ring, and the base. So they all need to be taken into these pieces to be washed. And before you reassembled it, you would need to dry them completely. You would make sure that the gasket goes right next to the jar itself. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to make it watertight. Then the blade goes inside the jar. And then the bottom ring is used to hold all of it together. If you don't take your blender apart, if it's designed to come apart and you don't take it apart every time, you can get mold and things growing between the gasket and the jar. And then after the insert and the lid are each dried, we would take this and put it back together. A little twist, make sure that it doesn't come apart. So these parts can all get washed, can go in a sink of hot soapy water or even in the dishwasher, but the base should never go in the dishwasher or the hot soapy water. However, it should always be wiped clean after each use. So for our slushy lemonade, the first thing we need to do is zest the lemon, and that's where we take off just a little bit of the outer colorful layer of the skin. There's a lot of oils and a flavor in that part of a citrus fruit. So we're going to use either a zester or a microplane grater, and I'll show you each. So the zester, we're just going to zest it into this custard cup. You just use short cuts across the surface of the fruit. So you would do this for lemons, limes, oranges, maybe even grapefruits, but generally just for citrus fruits. The microplane grater is a little bit different. Kind of scrape the fruit across there more than the tool across the fruit. Now it's really important that we don't go too far, because the white part is referred to as the pith, P-I-T-H, and that is very bitter. So we don't want to get any of the pith in, just the zest. So it has a lot of flavor. So you can see it's on the back. We're just going to tap. And that's going to fall into our custard cup. So now we're ready to juice the lemon after we've zested it. And I did wash off my lemon and dry it before any of this. So we have to cut this in half so that it looks like a wagon wheel. And then it's ready to put on the reamer. That's the pointed part of the juicer. I've got the custard cup here ready to catch the juice. And that way I can measure as I juice the lemon, so I know when I have enough. So I've got the center of the lemon on the point of the reamer, and you push the lemon around to get all the juice out. So we're going to go from this to this. And the nice part about this particular juicer is while it extracts the juice, it catches the pulp and the seeds. So I already had some lemon juice in here. I need just a little bit more. I'm almost at a half a cup. So this half should give me plenty of juice. There's a lot of pulp there, so I might need to let that sit a minute so that the juice can get through. And then we can move on to putting it in the blender. So now to make our slushy lemonade, we're simply going to put all of the ingredients in the blender. I like to put the liquid ingredients in first, just so that the sugar doesn't get stuck, the zest doesn't get stuck or clumped down at the bottom. And it's important to note that your ice should stay in the freezer until you're ready to add it to the blender. So now we're going to put the lid on because you never want to blend without that. We're going to use on versus pulse, and I've got it set to a higher setting. And then we'll even hit it with a little bit of the ice crush before the end. Turn that off. Once all of our ice has been crushed, we're going to take it off of the base before taking the lid completely off. We would unplug it before cleaning the base. And now we're ready to pour our slushy lemonade. It's ready to serve.